Hello, this is Mario from Audion. In this video, we will show you how you can set up an auralization in Audion. This is a feature available in Audion Auditorium and Combined. An auralization is an audio simulation that allows you to listen to the acoustics of a virtual room. We will first play the input signal. Now, we will play the auralization of that signal in this concert hall. Since this is a binaural auralization, you should listen with headphones for an accurate listening experience. On our website, we have many other examples of auralizations produced with Audion. Go to audion.dk, Examples, and then into any of the categories. First, we will try a basic auralization with only one source. The first step is to check if auralizations are enabled. To do that, we will go to the auralization setup icon at the top icon bar. Then, in the auralization output section, you can enable different formats of auralization. The simplest is binaural auralization, which is auralization over headphones. For that, binaural impulse response file should be enabled. So, what is a binaural impulse response? An impulse response is typically monaural, and it would be related to what is captured by a microphone. On the other hand, a binaural impulse response is related to what is captured by a pair of ears, taking into account several factors of human hearing such as perception of direction. We have a video talking about the theory of binaural auralization in more detail. HRTF stands for Head-Related Transfer Function. In this dropdown, make sure that the selection is one of the HRTFs starting with the word subject, preferably the one showing Res5Deg as it has a finer resolution than the other one. This dropdown is for an inverse filter to flatten the response of your headphones. If you have one of the headphone models in the list, then you should select its corresponding inverse filter. Otherwise, select one of the options starting with subject, which are generic filters. The rest of the settings here are a little advanced, so for now, we will not meddle with them. Now, let's go to the job list at the top icon bar. For auralizations, you need to have a single point response set up. As we mentioned in a previous tutorial, the receiver direction is relevant for auralizations. Here, you can change it to the -X direction or towards any source. At the right side of the screen, you will see the Auralizations tab. This opens the window where we can define auralizations. If there is no such tab, that means that none of the impulse responses for auralization are enabled. The left side shows a convolver. This window displays a list of convolutions, which are each an individual combination of an anechoic recording and a single point response. The right side is the mixer, which is divided into two further subsections. The first one shows the mixes, which can each contain and combine many convolutions. The second section shows which convolutions are included in the selected mix. So, let's set up an auralization. Fortunately, Audion already comes with a selection of recordings, which we also call wave signals, to carry out auralizations. These recordings are anechoic, meaning they have been recorded in a sound-absorbent room such as an anechoic chamber. This is necessary in order to produce an accurate simulation. There's a piano signal that I personally like, called Piano Autumn Leaves, which is this one. So, on the signal subpath column, I'll select the subfolder Piano Recordings. Then, on the signal file column, I will select Piano Autumn Leaves. To listen to the anechoic recording, first click on the row under any of the orange headers. Then, click on this Play Wave button, or use the Alt-S shortcut. To use your own anechoic recordings for auralizations, first go to your Audion installation folder, and then to the Wave Signals folder. You will simply need to copy your audio files into this folder. But keep in mind that the audio files should be in WAV format and have a sample rate of 44.1 kHz. Then, you will be able to select them within Audion. Notice here that there is no signal subpath selected. Leaving this field blank lets you select WAV files in the Wave Signals root folder. For this example, I will keep the Piano Autumn Leaves recording. Next, I will select the job, that is, the source and receiver positions. This will only show jobs with a single point response. Here, I will choose job 3, which uses source P1 and receiver 1. We can then perform the calculation by clicking again anywhere on this row, then on Run Single Job. Running a convolution in the auralization window will actually calculate the required job and the auralization itself. When the calculation is done, you can visualize the binaural impulse response in the single point response. In the auralization window, you can directly access the single point response of the job in the currently selected convolution. Then, you will find the binaural room impulse response in the BR/IR tab. And you can listen to it by going to the context-sensitive menu of this tab, then to Play Impulse Response. But you can also listen to it directly by clicking this icon. Then, in this window, you can save a copy of the binaural impulse response WAV file. More interestingly, we can now listen to the auralization itself. However, it is likely that the playback level will be too low or too high. This box here shows the maximum sound level in the auralization. Digital audio should never exceed 0 decibels. Anything above that will distort the audio. If you exceed a level of 0, then the convolution will be shown in purple when highlighted, or red when not highlighted, to warn you of high volume and distortion. We would recommend an output level between -10 and 0 decibels. For this auralization, we have a level of approximately -31 decibels, which is too low. We can add a gain in this recording level column. In this case, I will add a gain of 27 decibels so that my max output is around -4 decibels. This change will erase the current convolution, so you will need to recalculate it. However, this does not erase the impulse response, only the convolution will be recalculated. After recalculating, you can double check that the maximum output is now between -10 and 0. Now we can listen to the oralization. We will click on the row to select the convolution, but in order to listen to the oralization, this time we click under any of the blue headers. Then we again use the Alt-S shortcut. Since this is now an oralization, make sure to listen with headphones for the binaural effect. Keep in mind that if you click under the orange headers, you will only listen to the anechoic recording, so make sure to click under the blue headers instead. Just as with binaural impulse responses, you can save the oralization as a WAV file. You can also calculate and play oralizations in real time. To do that, let's go back to the Jobs tab. First, we select the desired single point response, in this case, job 3. Then we click on Streaming Convolution. Here, click the play button to start convolving in real time. The streaming convolution will automatically adjust the gain.
The Athenian agora in Soslo. It was during the 5th century before Christ.
You can also change signals during the convolution.
As a commercial and civic center of Athens. Before the middle of that century, the center of public theater activities.
Keep in mind that oralizations cannot be saved in this window. Now let's calculate a mix, which is a combination of convolutions. Here, I will define a few additional convolutions. In the signal subpath and the signal file columns, you can type the starting letters of an item in the list to select it quickly. This can be quicker than opening the drop-down menu. For example, I will type S and P to select the speech subfolder. This even works in the job number column by pressing number keys. You can also copy-paste convolutions with the Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V shortcuts. Let's make an oralization combining the two speech convolutions.
Não te deixes destruir, ajuntando novas pedras e construindo novos poemas. Recria tua vida sempre, sempre.
So off went the emperor in procession under his splendid canopy. Everyone in the street and the windows said, "Oh, how fine are the emperor's new clothes! Don't they fit him to perfection?"
Each recording is assigned to a different source, but both jobs have the same receiver. I will first select a mix and give it a description. Then, on the right side, we select the convolutions we want to add to the currently selected mix. I will first select convolution 3. When creating a mix, you can only combine convolutions with the same receiver and the same receiver direction. So, after selecting convolution 3, convolutions 1 and 2 are no longer available, since they either have a different receiver or a different receiver direction. On the other hand, convolution 4 does have the same receiver and receiver direction as convolution 3. So, it can be selected as part of the mix together with convolution 3. You can adjust the level of each convolution for this mix only, without affecting other mixes. This calibration column is to adjust the level of different anechoic recordings to have the same A-weighted level. So, if I tick the checkbox for both WAV files, they will be adjusted to have a comparable loudness. Keep in mind that this adjustment is applied on the files before the convolution. To calculate the mix, we select it, then click on Run Single Job. If the level of your mix is too low or too high, you can adjust the level of all convolutions without having to adjust each one individually. To do that, go back to the realization setup and then to overall recording level. This is a gain that is applied on all convolutions. To apply it, simply close the window. Again, you will have to recalculate the mix, but this won't recalculate the jobs. To listen to the mix, I will select it and hit Alt-S.
Não
So
te
off
deixes
went the
destruir,
emperor in procession
ajuntando
under his
novas
splendid
pedras
canopy.
e construindo
Everyone in the
novos
street
poemas.
and the windows said,
Recria tua
"Oh,
vida
how fine
sempre,
are the emperor's
sempre.
new clothes."
As you can see, the mixer interface allows you to play with different combinations of sources, receivers, and signals, and it's simple when you only have a few sources. But if you want to define a whole orchestral ensemble, each source with their own signal file, defining it here can be a bit of work. This is why we also have the multi-source signal auralization expert over here. It allows you to easily select a group of WAV files, assign them to each of your sources, and Nodin will automatically generate the required jobs in the mix. First, we will delete our current convolutions. We can select multiple with Ctrl-click, Shift-click, or Ctrl-A to select all. Then we hit Ctrl-Delete and confirm. I will also define a new group of sources. Remember that you can define a group of regularly spaced sources with the tabulation tool, which we explain in detail in another video. Now, back in the auralization window, we go to the multi-source signal auralization expert. First, you can enter the mix description here. Then, select the receiver, which will be your listening position. For this example, we will leave the default of receiver 1. You can also change the direction here, which can have a big impact in auralizations. The default direction is towards -X, though you can also aim your receiver towards any of your sources. To orient to an arbitrary coordinate, you can define a dummy source at that coordinate and just not assign any WAV file to it. In this model, the -X direction is facing towards the stage, so we will keep the orientation towards -X. You will see a list of your sources down here. To assign WAV files to your sources, you can select them individually in the same way as in the convolver, or you can click on Select Multiple Signal Files. Browse to the folder that contains the files, highlight them by shift-clicking, and click on Select Signal Files. You can now see that each signal file has been assigned to each source. If you select less files than the number of sources, the last sources will be left without a WAV file. For example, in this model I have 12 sources, but I selected 11 WAV files. Therefore, the WAV files were allocated to the first 11 sources. Again, in this case, source 12 is a dummy source we created only for aiming the receiver. So, this is actually useful in order to keep the source inactive. To finish up, we just close this window and accept the confirmation. Now, new jobs and convolutions have been defined, as well as a mix that puts together those convolutions. To calculate all jobs, convolutions, and mix them, we simply click on the mix and run it. Before listening, you might just need to adjust the overall recording level and rerun it. Since the overall recording level is applied on the individual convolutions, when your mix consists of many convolutions, an increase in the overall recording level may not correspond exactly to the same increase in the max-out level of the mix. So, you may need to adjust the overall recording level and rerun the mix a few times until you get a good max-out level. Now we can listen to it. We can listen to some of the individual convolutions by selecting them in the list of mixed convolutions. When you use the Select Multiple Signal Files button, Audyon will take the wave files in alphabetical order and assign them to the sources in numerical order. However, Audyon can also automatically assign the wave files to specific sources. To do this, you should first rename the sources so that the descriptions match the wave file names. The wave files should be in their own folder. Then, in the Multi-Source Signal Auralization expert, click on Pair Sources with Signal Files. Go to the folder containing the wave files and click on Select Folder. Audyon will then assign each wave file to the source with the matching description. If a mix is selected and you click on the Multi-Source Signal Auralization expert, you will go into editing that mix. Alternatively, you can also edit a mix by double-clicking on it. Just like with individual convolutions, you can duplicate a mix with the Ctrl-C and Ctrl-V shortcuts. This is especially useful if you want to calculate the same auralization for a different receiver position, in which case you will first duplicate it, then go into editing it, and change the receiver. I will also enter a new description while I'm here. When closing the Auralization expert, new jobs will be created for the new receiver. We have some predefined orchestral simulations which you can download from our website. Under Downloads, Zip Archives with Anechoic Recordings. These include the room model, complete setup, and anechoic recordings which can be used in any other room model. Additionally, you can transfer orchestral setups from these zip archives or from your own previous models to other rooms. This is shown in our video on moving an entire orchestra to a new room. We have some additional tools for auralization which we also explain in other videos. 360 auralization allows you to freely rotate your listening direction and hear the sound change in real time. The Soundscape app is an interface where you can change between different auralizations by selecting different sources, receivers, and even material setups. The interface is generated as an HTML web app, so it can be shared to people that don't own Audion. If you have the recording of a single instrument or of a few speaking people, you can simulate a realistic instrument section or a crowd with Audion's audio effects.
Equilibrar a resposta de uma sala no tempo, na frequência e no espaço não é uma tarefa simples. Equilibrar a resposta de uma sala no tempo, na frequência e no espaço não é uma tarefa simples.
With that, we conclude this tutorial, and we hope you have found it useful. To discover the other auralization tools we just mentioned, we recommend you to check our playlist on auralization. Good luck,